Welcome to DTBY's community podcast hosted by the CYC. We are a movement dedicated to inspiring, mentoring, and building the leadership capabilities of tomorrow's leaders.
We recognize the power of community as a key component for thriving and wellness. So we create this podcast to highlight and spread awareness about organizations we believe uplift the community.
Through sharing a diverse range of local leaders' stories and passions, we hope to promote inclusivity and inspire others to get involved within their community.
As always, before we introduce this month's guest, we'd first like to offer a land acknowledgement.
Although this gathering is virtual, we recognize that DTBY convenes on the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional territory of many nations, including the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat peoples, and is also home now to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people.
At DTBY's charity, we are proud to promote the spirit of helping, sharing, and caring for our neighbors without the expectation that has been exemplified by each of these nations as the first peoples of this land for thousands of years. And we wish to acknowledge our gratitude for the ongoing opportunity to live, work, and build community on this land.
We all have a collective responsibility to take care of ourselves and these lands, and it's past time to turn reflection into action. And we challenge ourselves and everyone here joining us today to commit to at least one tangible next step to move this work forward.
For real.
Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Dare to Be Used community podcast hosted by the CYC. My name is Alexa, and I am joined here today by my fellow CYC member, Martina. On behalf of the CYC, it is our absolute pleasure to introduce our very first guest to the series, co-leads of PFLAG Halton, Taylor, and Witt. These two amazing individuals are leading the change to support and advocate for the 2SL LGBTQIA+ community across Halton, and we are so honored to have you both join us here today. Welcome, and thank you for joining.
Thank you, Alexa.
To kick things off, can you give us an overview of your of PFLAG's mission, as well as the programs you offer to accomplish this mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to read you our mission statement. So in communities across the country, the PFLAG Canada Network provides peer support, education, and advocacy for a Canada that affirms, respects, and values all sexualities, genders, and gender expressions. And we have a few peer support programs in Halton. So we focus mostly on adults right now. Yep. So our primary support is glowing pains. That is for trans adults seeking support, peer support from others in the community. You can speak more to that as you attend that.
Yeah, I mean, part of the impetus for a lot of our programming was that when we started PFLAG Halton, and I'm sure we'll get more into, the origins, but there was a lot of supports for youth within the Halton region, but there wasn't a lot for adults, right? And so what happens to the youth when, they turn 25 and they age out of programming, because most programming for youth goes to 24. What happens, where do they go for support? So one of the programming that we developed alongside community members, and I think that's another important thing to notice, is that with PFLAG Halton, all of our programming is run by individuals with lived experience, right? As people who are peers to others in the community. And with Glowing Pains, our group is run by, a fantastic facilitator who herself, she's a trans individual. She has many lived experiences, lots of great advice to provide. And we've created a really, fantastic network for trans adults, non-binary, gender diverse folks across Halton region, but it also has expanded beyond that, right? We have folks coming from all over Canada and even the United States to our virtual meetups, because they don't know where to go, right? So they're turning to online programming. So that's one of them. We also have, do you want to talk about our parent and caregiving programming?
Yeah, sure. So our parent and caregiver programming is for parents of kids in the queer community. So they could come from all different backgrounds. They could be trans, they could be gay, they could be lesbian, they could be non-binary. It's really under the umbrella. And I guess the questions there are very broad. The conversations are very broad. So you can come there if you're looking for just somewhere to start. That's a really good place to start. Just parents and caregivers programming. Another one we have, transparenting. So that is more specific to parents of trans kids. We separated those because parents coming to these have very specific questions. It's not necessarily my kid just came out as gay, what do I do? It's down to the nitty gritty. And this is for adults only, for the most part, because there are conversations there. We welcome parents of the trans community to come and learn and help educate and, grow and learn from it. Do you want to speak more to that?
Yeah, I think Taylor put it so perfectly, right? Like with a group like Transparenting, you can imagine if you're a parent or a caregiver, right? It's not just parents, it's caregivers as well. Important adults in a youth's life. If a youth comes out to you as trans and you don't know where to turn to, it's so helpful and affirming to talk to others who are going through what you're going through, right? So our facilitators for a group like Transparenting are two parents who have two trans kids themselves, right? So they're living that journey alongside the individuals that they're supporting. And I think that's another thing that sort of hammers home the mission statement of PFLAG Canada, of which we are a part, is that we are one of the only organizations in the country that provides peer support to the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. And peer support means drawing on our own lived experiences. We're not therapists, we're not mental health experts. Some of us are, right, in our day jobs, but we draw on that. But really it's about that lived experience. It's about that relativity piece. Like, so we can draw connections and say, we've been through this and here's what we did, right? So a lot of these conversations are folks reaching out saying, where do I go to? Where do I find an affirming doctor for my kid? How do I start my child on HRT? How do I find a doctor to, sign a piece of paper to get them affirming surgery, right? And so we have those conversations, and it's all of us saying, oh, well, we tried this, that didn't work. We tried this, right? It's kind of like crowdsourcing solutions and bringing support.
Yeah, and it's building community. So, if somebody is going through this experience, the worst feeling is feeling alone and feeling like you're the only kid going through this, or you're the only parent going through this. So it's just creating that culture of community. It just makes, it easier to, celebrate this journey.
Yeah.
So those are the ongoing programs that we have on a monthly basis. We also have sporadic youth programming. For example, on Wednesday, February 22nd, we have a youth game night. So it's for youth of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. We do things like that. We pop up that pop up because it's when our youth facilitators are available, to do programs like that. We are about to start up a program with Milton Public Library. We're going to do a zine workshop. We had one in the past. It was very successful. So we're going to start that up again in partnership with the library. So, we try to do as many things for youth as we can. But we don't have our set monthly meetings yet. That is what we hope to do and get established with our funding from 100 Women Who Care Burlington.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. I really like how you emphasize or your program center around fostering that environment of unity and community, because as we know, having that aura or just feeling of togetherness really helps people and youth and parents flourish, especially for the marginalized communities. So that's really amazing. I also really love how you have supports and programs for parents of youth, and especially because I know myself, I'm somebody who really loves to advocate for mental health, and I know myself that for a child to flourish, for a child to thrive, they need to grow up in a safe environment. And yeah, you providing those supports for parents is really amazing.
Thank you. Absolutely.
That's awesome. And then, so I'll start it off with our next question. Now, I know that you mentioned that you're the first sort of organization or program to implement peer support. But the next question kind of centered around what would make your organization unique?
There's a few things. We'll probably both answer this. Well, you go first. Okay. What makes us unique is that we are the only peer support program currently running in Halton.
For the queer and trans community.
Yeah, for exactly. Yeah, for the 2S LGBTQI plus community. And we're 100% volunteer run. Nobody makes money. It is all on our own free will and our own time. It's just a commitment that we make.
Yeah, and to that point, like, there's lots of amazing organizations within Halton region who are doing work either similar to ours or adjacent. But I think one of the things that we all have in common, but is still particular, especially when you're talking with volunteers, is that drive to give back. All of the volunteers, the two of us included, like, this is on top of all the other responsibilities that we have, right? And we do this because we see the need for it. We feel that it is so important, so critical. Which is sort of what you were saying about, like, creating that space and making youth feel supported through giving their parents the tools and empowering their parents to be better. Like, that's kind of the drive that keeps our volunteers going. So I think it's unique because a lot of us are doing this because we have that lived experience. Like, I know for Taylor and myself, and it's probably going to bleed into some other questions that we'll talk about, but like, we wish that there were supports like these for us when we were younger, right? We came out in very different generations. So a lot of our volunteers see that need and have that desire, that spark to make change because they want to see society, they want to see the world be more affirming and accepting of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community. So I think that's probably like the standout unique point is like, all of us are making time for this because it's so important and we're not getting paid for it. Like, the value for us, the payoff is seeing change and progress happen for the 2S LGBTIA community, especially our youth.
That's awesome. That's really amazing, especially because you're implementing that sort of inclusivity factor, and on the basis that it is volunteering. So I know that being part of Dare to Be You as a volunteer experience, I think I am going on 3 years.
That's awesome.
Nice.
But yeah, no, just being able to volunteer my time, it's like you said, it's not about the money, the value you gain from the relationships that you build within the program and the community and just helping out the youth, and it makes you feel good. But yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, so going to our next question. Can you provide us with your best example that you've seen your organization's work make a difference?
There's so many to pick from. What I will say is that a lot of, maybe the examples that I think we have are very anecdotal and they're also personal. But for us, it's like the small, subtle changes that we might see. Like, for instance, if we, there's some parents that have been coming to our peer support meetings for years. And when they started, they maybe consistently dead named their kid, didn't understand why pronouns were important, had questions that were very invasive, but they're trying to learn. And then it's that evolution, right? And so 4 months later, after them, hanging out with us for a few monthly meetings, next thing I know, they're introducing themselves and saying, "Hi, my name is so-and-so, my pronouns are this." Whereas 4 months ago, they didn't know why pronouns were important, why they should be an ally and share their pronouns, right? It's those small, subtle changes where you start to see families not be fearful anymore, but feel joy and acceptance, and also just feel so proud of their children. I think for us, that's that's what it is. It's seeing that transformation. And to speak sort of to the question that you asked before about, what makes our organization unique. And we mentioned how we're all volunteers. Like, again, I think that's it. Like, there's so many days where I know for myself and my wife, Taylor, and all of our countless volunteers, like, this is extra work and we're tired, but it's those stories or those moments where you see a youth be like, hey, my parents, they haven't misgendered me in like 3 weeks, or so-and-so isn't bullying me anymore because they've got a better understanding of who I am as a person, or a parent being like, you know what, I was really terrified when my kid came out to me as non-binary, but now I realize what a gift it is. So it's those small moments that really affirm for us that our work is making a difference. It definitely takes time, but it's, oh my gosh, it's so worth it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, well, and we get momentum going. So sometimes there'll be, these big things that kind of really drive us to make this huge difference. Kind of like, a couple of years ago when there was the big thing over the Catholic school board not flying the pride flag. So that got us all rowdy. And so we worked really hard to get our voice in there and, to see what we could do to help. And that's where I'll say brand recognition is really important, because, Taylor and Whit could do all these things and we have it in us to do all these things and to make this change. But when you have a name behind you, a brand like PFLAG, people listen to you and it means something. And so I feel like, the way that I've seen our organization make a difference is because the platform that we have to get to make this change, people, value what we have to say because of that, even though other people are just as valuable. So we use that to the best of our advantage. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I got.
I think, I'd like to, I know when I was in Student Senate, that was a big battle with like the pride flag, and also completely, like, I was so furious about that, and just like that you stepped up and let your voice be heard. Still upset like that it didn't exactly come through, but at least you have that platform, and it shows also like it shows your own growth and like how your own organization has flourished over the years, that you have a voice to share with others. Like, I mean, how do I word this? That you should take pride with yourselves, and how much you've grown, that you can, that others can, even though they may not always implement what you say, they can listen, and they will listen,
Yeah,
thank you.
It definitely keeps us going. Those are the stories that I think keep us and our volunteers going when we know we've made even, it can be a small change or a big change, but they're all so meaningful.
It's change and it pushes forward, right?
Mm-hmm. Especially how you said about like the little shifts, the little changes, the little steps forward up the ladder within terms of the parents understanding and accepting their children. Because even I, like in my household, I didn't always feel understood and seen, and I would ask my mom, like, please, like, understand where I'm coming from. And then when you see that parent really working on it and really seeking to understand you, it feels so fulfilling, and it's such a warm feeling to feel that like safety, that unity, and that you have that support. So just dedicating your time towards that, I'm sure that the youth, the queer and trans community appreciate that more than you know, because even I can attest to that with how my parents are motivated to understand me better. And awesome. So moving on to our next question. So I know how you said that through your own lived experience, you are motivated to get involved with this, but what would you say specifically pushed you to get involved with PFLAG? Did you feel like this is a calling that you have? Do you feel like this is like your life purpose?
So we're laughing.
Very personal.
We're laughing because we've got a funny story about it. I mean, I'll preface by saying, like, Taylor and I are married. I'm used to living in a city, like a bigger city, like not like a Halton region city.
Okay, the city of Hamilton.
I love Hamilton. I'm just going to put that on record. Hamilton is my favorite city in the world.
Hamilton is great.
And when when we got engaged, Taylor was like, well, you have to move to Halton region. And I was like, why can't we just have 2 homes? And no, that was not an option. And my biggest fear, not even fear, is more like reservation, is that I was used to living in a city for over 10 years that had a really vibrant queer culture. There was, art, theater, community, but just you could walk down the street and see queer and trans people everywhere. And when I would come into Halton region, I did not feel that. I felt it was very suburban. I felt it was very cis, very hetero. And I remember just telling Taylor, like, these are my fears. And my lovely wife, I'm going to say this, I think she clearly really wanted to marry me, because her response was,
well, we'll just, fight hard in Halton. Like, we'll just make change in Halton.
We'll make it queer, is what she told me. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, oh, well, I've been having these conversations, and apparently with PFLAG Canada, like you can actually just apply to start a chapter anywhere, and like you can get support, and Halton doesn't have one. And so I think I'm going to do that. And I was just like, oh, okay. So long story short, what motivated us to get involved with PFLAG Halton was that my wife was so in love with me. She wanted me to move to Halton region.
Whit loves answering this question.
I love it, can you tell? Is that she really wanted me to move to Halton region. So she started a PFLAG Halton chapter. But all jokes aside, why did we do this? Why do we spend our nights our very little limited free time doing this work?
Yeah. I think we're both really compassionate people who really just want people to feel good. I think that's what it comes down to. And our personal, lived experience is with the queer and the trans community. So, that's our passion, is to work with that group. When my kids were babies, I volunteered with, organizations that serviced kids and babies. But right now, my passion is to make change for the community that I'm a part of. My children are grown. So we even get our kids involved, and do things like that. I had another part, but you go ahead while I think.
Oh, I was just gonna say on the kid thing, I think that's also important for us. Like, we're very lucky to have 4 amazing children, and we also wanted to demonstrate, like you folks, you volunteer, you're doing work in the community, and we wanted to show them the benefit of volunteering, about being community engaged, because it really is, it's such a transformative experience to build community, to make those connections, to establish relationships with others. And we wanted to demonstrate and teach our children that not everything you do has to equate to a paycheck, that there's merit in doing work in your community for change, without a monetary value. So I think that's another sort of principled version of why we also like doing this work. But I think also, like, for me, there's that small, like, closeted queer and non-binary, like 12-year-old version of myself that I'm calling on by being like, oh, this would have been really great for me, right? I would have really benefited from an organization like this, or my parents could have benefited from going to one of our peer support groups, right? And while I didn't have that opportunity, instead of becoming jaded and getting frustrated, it's like, okay, I have a lot of privilege in my life now. How can I use the platform and the resources that I have and use that privilege for good and make changes so that, my 12-year-old queer self couldn't benefit from it, but maybe somebody else could. Right? It's all about looking forward into the next generation, and how can we leave our society, our world in a better place.
Yeah. And on that note, thinking back to, and it changes perspective. So thinking back to that parent who reached out and then showed up to their first trans parenting meeting, or their parents and caregivers meeting, and they question, well, I don't like that my kid came out, or I don't like that my kid's gay, or, recognizing that they took the first step and they're trying to help their kid. So it does, if my parents had done that at the beginning, there'd be a lot less resentment, right? Because that they genuinely just want to help. Parents typically don't dislike, the fact that their kids are gay or trans, that comes from fear. So they are scared to death of how their kids are going to be treated. So at the end of the day, if we can educate people, it's going to alleviate and reduce and alleviate, hopefully, that fear. And then it's just going to be, a safer place. So recognizing that, I think, is what keeps us going with PFLAG as well.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's very beautiful. And how you say, like, you're clearly very compassionate people. And yeah, I think that's what makes your message and just the organization such a loving place. You have to have that compassion, and that comes from your own experience. And that's very beautiful. That's what drives me as well, because, like, why am I doing this? Why am I part of Dare to Be You? Why am I love advocating for mental health? I think personally, what life all about is about love. It's about giving love. It's about receiving love. It's all about love. And I think the most fulfillment, the most rewarding experiences comes from giving love to others, for creating that community, for making others feel safe. And that's the same thing that drives me within, what I said, like my volunteer experience. So yeah, that's very beautiful. And I love how you also said that how in Halton there wasn't a very inclusive environment. So you said there isn't that already. I'm not going to wait for anybody else to do it. I'm going to do it. Like, amazing.
That's all Taylor. I would have been like, no, I'll just stay in Hamilton. She would have changed it.
And I'll say too, when Whit first moved to Milton, they wouldn't even hold my hand walking down the street.
We used to get, because we had it like homophobic slurs yelled at us, right? Yeah, so there was that. And then Taylor was just like, if we don't do it, what are like the kids, like, are the kids going to do it? Like, let's take the slurs ourselves. And I was like, oh, I never thought of it like that. Like, we're in this position of privilege. So
the little things too, you force yourself to make that change, whether it be, something that's on a pedestal or lower to the ground, like holding hands, or, being affectionate at the dinner table. And,
having the pride flag out, right?
Exactly.
Simple things that we didn't see before. And now we see like the big difference that it can make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's very profound. Like, recognizing I have the responsibility. I have like taking gratitude that I have that privilege. I can make that change. Why not me? Like, what am I gonna fear? If it doesn't work out, like, you're gonna make it work because you have that power. And that's really important. Amazing.
It still doesn't mean it's not hard sometimes. It's exhausting. Like, there are times when we decide that we're going to be intentional about, the way we interact in public, or, the conversations that we have with other people. It can be absolutely exhausting because, sometimes the interactions are difficult. They're not easy. They're not always friendly. But it's just continuing to push.
Yeah, because you do it with purpose, right?
Yeah.
When there's a purpose, where there's those core values, that's always there to push you, even when it's tiring. Cool.
Sure.
That's awesome. Well, we'll go on to our next question, but the question was, how has your role changed in the last few years with respect to the society becoming more generally accepting towards the queer and trans community? And like you said, do you notice a difference in the Halton region now that you're living here?
So,
okay. I think we can both speak to this.
Yeah. Okay. I will preface this by, I feel like if you would have asked us this a year ago, my answer would have been much more positive.
No, I actually have. So,
are we going to disagree?
Yeah, I think we're gonna, and that's okay. Okay. So my thoughts are, if I may, I think absolutely it has become a lot more progressive than it was a few years ago. But I think because it has sort of, swung to the left a little bit more, it's giving people, like marginalized communities, a little bit of empowerment and confidence to be who they are. When you have that sense of confidence and you're out there and you're showing up as yourself, well, it does bring out the people who don't necessarily agree with that or want that, or that do fear that. And so you're left head on head. And it's sort of like outspoken. It's out there, it's visible. So I don't necessarily, I think the reason we're disagreeing is because you're going to say.
You're an optimist and I'm a cynic. That's pretty much what it is, right?
Yeah, so absolutely, I just wanted to interject before Whit came in there and said, actually, absolutely. If you asked me a few years ago, I would have said everything.
It's definitely our roles have changed, Alexa, in the sense that I think absolutely we do have more individuals who we have more people attending our programming, right? And so I think that that's a sign of change. That's a sign of positive change, right? So people who are looking for support to better understand their children, to better support them. And I think that's an important distinction to note is most of the people that are coming to our programming, if they're parents and caregivers, they're not coming because they want to challenge what they've heard their kids say. It's more, they're like, I want to better understand this. Also in terms of our youth programming, the youth that we are meeting, it's just transformational, right? Hanging out with 13-year-old trans kids is so, it's transformative, right? To think that, 20 years ago, a 13-year-old didn't have the ability to come out in the same way that they do now, right? So we do see changes on that front. I think just overall, though, we're starting to see a return of homophobia and transphobia within Halton region, but across Canada, that is kind of alarming. So that's where I sort of said, that's where
but that's why I said that.
No, and you did you're more eloquent than I am in that regard. I just get frustrated because I'm this is becoming something that I think we're starting to see that sort of turn. And that's where I think we need to be more vigilant. And we also beyond just our community, we need allies to stand up for us. And so that's where I see our role changing, where now it's not just providing support for families to understand. I think our role now is more about advocacy and standing up to hate in a way that it might not have necessarily been that way even a year or two ago, if that makes sense. So it's not a negative, it's just our role has changed and we're happy to do it. But I think having sort of a realistic understanding of the socio-political climate that we're living in right now.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. You both provide different lights on the topic, but I think it's important to know that you are providing a voice not only for the youth in that community, but like Martina said, you're providing a voice for the parents for their children, right? It's a step-by-step process. It's interesting that you bring up Hamilton, actually, because I go to McMaster.
Yes, McMaster.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just my maturity level or everything, but I am able to notice a lot more involvement in our community, especially just around that Hamilton area. Like you said, it's very diverse, very sort of inclusive, especially our environment. The amount of programs and events that we have ongoing is consistent throughout the community, which I love to see. I love the campus. I love that community, but it's just nice to see, like you said, not only the support, but the advocacy for people within that community, advocating for others, which is really nice to see, but that's awesome. So the next question is, what are the most imperative challenges facing the 2S LGBTQIA plus community today?
Oh,
Wolf care.
Yeah. So one of the ones that I think that we see a lot within our organization, just given with the individuals and families that we're supporting, is that throughout Ontario, throughout Canada, there's really an emergency in terms of the lack of gender affirming healthcare options available to trans and gender diverse individuals within our communities, right? So there's really, really long wait lists to find a gender affirming doctor, right? So if we think about youth in particular in this scenario, right? If we're supporting a 16-year-old who is looking to go on puberty blockers, right? Like hormone blockers for puberty, and then eventually to start HRT once they're over the age of 18, and then looking at gender affirming surgeries. And preface, not every trans kid is gonna need that or want that. But if they do, there's incredibly long wait lists for the clinics that are available. If we send them to Sick Kids or we send them to McMaster, it's 20 to 24 months minimum of a wait list. So you can imagine if you're 16, well, you've aged out then of that youth clinic, and you now need to find a gender affirming family doctor or endocrinologist or just somebody who can support you. And so many doctors refuse to treat trans patients and gender diverse patients because either they're transphobic or it's largely a lot of ignorance. They don't have the proper training. They're not sure. They put their hands up. But if it was any other condition, they would treat these patients. They would go and figure it out. Right. So that is like just number one. Right. And that correlates, I think, to the mental health sort of crises that we see within our community. And I think that's a big barrier as well, just to existence. Right. Is that, if we look at the most recent Trans Pulse survey that surveyed, trans people across the country, 1 in 3 trans individuals had contemplated suicide in the past year. That's a huge issue, right? Mental health is such an important topic within our community. And if you can't find adequate healthcare, well, that's why we say it's a matter of life and death. It really is for our community. Another barrier is just a lack of understanding and acceptance, right? And we're seeing that in popular culture, in media right now, in the news, where there's that like return of like in sort of insidious, subtle hate or questioning, like, do these people belong here? And they absolutely do, right? Trans people, gender diverse individuals, queer people, they're human, right? And the fact that there's this sort of return to homophobia and transphobia, I think is really alarming and challenging within our community, right? It scares people, it harms people. So those are like, right away, those are the top 2 barriers that I'm seeing, but it's also then a lack of resources, right? Like even within the Halton region, one of the largest organizations that was serving youth, Positive Space Network, has since sort of like shrunk in terms of resourcing. So if you're a queer trans youth in Halton region, where do you go to find community? And if we're on the topic of mental health, there's that idea, I think our puppy's going at it. There's that idea of isolation, which can be so devastating. So where do you go to find support if there's not community resources? If you're the only queer kid in your circle of friends, or you're the only trans kid in your grade at high school, where do you turn to, right? So I think those are some of the overarching barriers that are existing and persisting within sort of Halton region and also like provincially that we need to do better at addressing. And we need more support beyond just a volunteer organization like ours or, a very small organization like Positive Space Network in Halton region.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that you say that like the lack of resources or healthcare also correlates to mental health and everything like that. Just the different networking that it can affect is very interesting. But yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, so leading into our next question, my screen, okay. Leading into our next question, so how you brought up that there's a rise of recent hate and homophobia. How important is it for youth to step up and get involved with organizations like yours to break down the barriers and create change in the community?
Extremely important. So it goes beyond just members of our community. So that's, I think, where allies have the biggest voice. So, like it could be small things like sharing your pronouns or just advocating for, the queer community. Is going to go much further than it would for a member of our own community, because there's that privilege there, right? They're gonna have the louder voice. They're gonna have more listeners, and it's just gonna go. I feel like what they have to say is going to go much further. They're going to be valued a little bit more. Sorry, my dog's eating my ankle.
But the point is that I also think maybe I'm gonna sound very hokey and optimistic and also a little old here. So bear with me, you 3 youth-ish individuals, which is to say that we always feel like the youth are going to save the world, right? The generations that we're seeing come up these days, it blows my mind. And it's even within our own home. Our children just have a knowledge and sense of compassion that I don't think we've seen in previous generations. Or at least I didn't see, right? Like, I'm thinking about when I was in high school and there was maybe one queer kid who was endlessly bullied in my school. And now, our 13-year-old comes home from school and talks about the non-binary friend that they met, or we invite somebody new over to the house and they're asking, oh, are they a he, she, or they? Right? There's just this vocabulary and this sense of awareness of diversity and lived experiences that wasn't at the forefront. So when youth get involved, like in organizations like ours, like, oh my goodness, the ability to affect change, it really is limitless, because youth have such a powerful voice. And I think that's also an important thing. Whereas as an organization, we're always striving to find ways to give youth a voice, because if we can give youth a platform, if we can give voices to younger generations who are on the ground and are experiencing the challenges that we just spoke about, others will listen. But we have to make space for individuals to hear them, right? And so giving power to youth voices is important. And I think the idea of just, anyone getting involved in a PFLAG Halton, in a Positive Space Network, or a, Dare to Be You organization is so important. Oh, Archie's going to make an appearance, because we're creating community, right? And if we create those strong community bonds, especially with our youth, well, that's going to carry on, right? That's going to make transformative change. So the more that we can do that, like, oh gosh, I'm getting hopeful now.
Yeah.
Right? So now my cynicism has deflated, but I do really think that younger generations are going to drive this change in a way that previous generations haven't. So if individuals are excited, if you feel like getting involved, we are always open to that, because we want to learn from others, right? We're doing this because we want to leave, we want to leave it a better, like, we want to leave Halton region a better place in 10 years than we experience it now. That's sort of the idea, right?
I think we can admit as well that anytime we attend these programs, I think we learn more.
Yes.
Anytime, during COVID, we had a lot of Zoom, like we weren't allowed to do in person. So everything was held via Zoom. And before we sort of split up, parents and caregivers, everything was kind of joined together. And we ended up learning from the youth. And it's sort of, I don't know, we left those meetings super excited, because we almost saw the difference that we were making, because we did allow them that voice, and we valued it so much that we actually use it in our own programming now. Their words, or what we use to educate other people. So youth definitely paved the way. Yeah.
Amazing answer. Okay, so I also wanted to add, I completely agree with you guys about, I don't want to say come off as our generation's superior, not at all, but I've noticed the same thing, how there's just the amount of awareness Gen Z have is absolutely profound. Like, from what I've seen, like on TikTok, the matters that members of my generation discuss, the depth that they have, the level of maturity, it's definitely astounding. And I really think that it's due to the advanced technology. Like, of course, there are pros and cons. Some may say that it's a huge disadvantage and it's stripping youth from physical connection, like going outside and connecting. But I really do see it also as a huge tool for youth to have these resources more accessible, because that's how even Alexa and I learned about Dare to Be You, through technology, and how we learn about these different matters, about information about the queer trans community. So I think that's really amazing. And yeah.
No, I can see that. I agree with you.
I don't know.
Technology.
It fosters connections in a way that is very, very different, but also very transformative and accessible, easier to connect with others, right? And build those relationships, but also build relationships in order to create change.
Yeah, find those resources. And we need those resources to build that community of unity. And also how you touched upon how it's valuable for youth even to use those pronouns. Like, I didn't understand the importance of that until you brought that up. I'm going to be honest here. Because, yeah, but just now I have a better understanding of how when members of the queer trans community see others show that acceptance by getting informed, then they can feel more supported more supported, more safe to show up as their authentic selves and be vulnerable about their own issues and seek out these resources like yours, these amazing organizations. So amazing. That's a really good point.
Awesome. So our next question says, Dare to Be You is built upon creating a community that is grounded in unity. How do you suggest we strive towards supporting the 2S LGBTQIA+ community?
I mean, you're doing it now. Giving us a voice to be here and have, conversation with you. You're asking questions, we're answering them, and just this dialogue, I think, goes a long way. So yeah, step one, good job.
Yeah, creating that space to have those conversations. And then, also, Martina, you talked about just like that willingness to learn, right? Like not knowing the importance of sharing your pronouns. And then you hear somebody say like, oh, it's important. Oh, okay. I'll look into that. I'll do it. Right. Like, I think just a willingness to listen to others is so important. Right. So if, Dare to Be You is like grounded in that idea of unity, well, unity cannot be achieved unless we're listening to others, right? Unless we're dialoguing and in conversation and like kind of grounding ourselves in the acknowledgement that our lived experiences aren't universal and others are going to have different experiences of the world, of power dynamics, of privilege, of oppression, of marginalization. So in doing that work and acknowledging that and listening to one another's, well, then we can start the real work of supporting one another and growing alongside one another, right? We're always looking for, we say allies, but really it's accomplices, right? It's like, who's going to do the dirty work? Who can we work alongside to get things done and progress change? So I think that's the number one thing, is just like listening to others. And that goes for us as well, right? Like, how do we as an organization try to affect change? Well, we're going to listen to others and listen to what they're telling us and say, like, if they tell us this is what they need, then we're going to go out and do that. And we're going to use our platform. And we're also going to use our platform, but step aside when it's not about us, right? Taylor and I are two white individuals. And so we're going to use our white privilege as much as we can, but step aside when it's an opportunity for us to give the platform to others who are more deserving and who don't always have that platform and privilege to use their voices. So I think that's also an important part of it, right? Is so listening, knowing when to step up, but also knowing when to step back and share that space.
Very well said.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that was beautiful. Thank you. And I think, like you said, it's also important to know that to be knowingly ignorant, but also to accept the fact that we don't know, and then being compelled to that inquiry and asking questions and everything like that is so important to create that safe space. But thank you. Our next question says, what advice would you provide to the family members or friends of a 2S LGBTQIA+ person who is looking to better understand them and help them thrive?
I would invite them to get educated, learn more, connect with us, visit our website, come to one of our support meetings, email us, ask the tough questions. There's nothing that we're not going to answer, especially if it's a private message. I think we need to alleviate that fear, because that, honestly, that's the evil component to it all. It's that fear. It's being scared. So breaking that down. So I would, if they are part of an organization or maybe their workplace, if maybe, they could inquire about inclusivity training, something like that. I don't know. It's education. It's education so that you're not scared, because that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. But I think, as you were saying, Taylor, like doing the work yourself, right? So if you're a family member or a friend of the community, and particularly in our experience, if somebody has just come out to you, right, as either trans or gender diverse, some sort of queer, don't put it on that person to educate you, right? Reach out for support, do the work, but also listen to the person who is telling you this stuff, right? And like, especially I'm thinking of, our default is to go to like parents, because that's sort of one of our standard things is like listen to your kids, listen, and when they tell you who they are, respect that, and also just,
well, don't say it's just a phase.
Or like take it in and be like, I don't know, like revel in the beauty that your kid was able to express something about themselves to you and they didn't feel afraid. And absolutely, if you're feeling fear, if you're feeling terrified, if you're feeling confused, go process those feelings, but not with the individual involved, right? So, like for Taylor and me, like as an example, if somebody was to come out to us and we didn't have the answers and we had questions, we might ask them, but we're also going to go figure that out on our own. And then we're going to come back and say, hey, I've learned this, and here's the work that we're doing, right? So I think that's the key. Like, how do you help somebody thrive is, well, you accept them, you affirm them. You don't say,
you listen to them.
Yeah, you listen, you don't dismiss them. You just say, oh, thank you for sharing that. Like, that's amazing. Like, you just shared something so beautiful and personal about yourself. And that really is a gift that you shared that with me. And maybe I don't know all the answers. Maybe I don't understand everything about your existence and your lived experiences, but I'm willing to listen and I'm willing to learn. And what I don't know, I'm going to be honest about, and I'm going to go figure it out. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think like coming at it from a place of curiosity and affirmation are sort of two key features.
Sort of. Yes. Curiosity for sure. But that doesn't mean go and ask. Don't go hound the person who just came out to you. You don't get to just go and ask them multiple questions.
Yes. Respectful curiosity.
Yeah. So absolutely be curious. Go on your own and educate yourself and, get the support you need to process that so that you can support the person who came out to you or the person coming to you for support. But don't ask somebody any questions that you wouldn't have, expect someone else to ask you, because we're all human. We all deserve the same amount of dignity and respect. And honestly, I think I would tell them to embrace it and celebrate the fact that somebody felt so safe to come and talk to you.
There's like a joy in it that I think we sometimes overlook. Yeah. Right. It really is an amazing experience to know that somebody has trusted you enough to share this part of themselves with you in a society where it's not always safe to do so. Right. So I always just think of it as like, if somebody shares that part of themselves with me, that means they think that I'm safe. That means they trust me. Yeah. And oh, wow, what a phenomenal experience it is to get to know somebody better. Right. So look for the moments of joy, look for the moments of happiness, and look for the moments of love that exist there. Because it really is beautiful and transformational if somebody in your life comes out to you as trans or non-binary or asexual or queer. Like, I'll go through the acronym, but it really is like a privilege to
receive that information.
To just, have access to that experience with them.
I would say the best thing they could do is to thank them for, telling them that information. Give them a hug if they're a hugging type person, and ask if they want to talk about it, or ask if, they want to sip some tea together, or, do you want to go out for dinner and chat about this? But let them continue that conversation, but thank them for coming to you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think you had said that earlier, Whit, is like, if they're coming to you because they trust you and you're kind of suppressing that talk, who else are they supposed to go to, right? If there's a lack of support and programs and everything like that. So I think it's important that, like you said, you're creating that safe space for parents to understand and for them to go back home and be like, okay, I understand this. I'm going to approach this differently. So that's really important. Thank you.
Okay, I thought it was going to move to my, okay, never mind. So yeah, I also wanted to add how you brought up the topic or the concept of listening. And I think that in our society, people just aren't aware of how to truly listen. Like, I think there needs to be more resources put out, sharing that information, how to be able to make somebody feel seen and heard and validated. I know like somebody will say like a simple, I'm sorry that you've been through that. And I feel like that can make a big effect. But even just saying like, I'm sorry that you felt this must have been a painful experience, or you must have felt very like rejected, or I can imagine how you could have felt like that way. I feel like in our society, that information is not shared enough. Like now there's that progression that people are becoming more informed, but I think there also needs to be more of a focus on in sharing that information about, because that's I think a big component of a lack of safe environments for youth and just generational trauma. The lack of feeling seen and safe means a lack of feeling seen and heard. And so it's like, how do we make that person feel seen and heard? And I feel like there should be more information about that too. Just not only for this specific community, but everybody, right? But yeah, so moving on to our last question. What advice would you give to a young person looking to get involved with your line of work?
What advice? Well, I would say reach out, shoot us an email. You can go to the website. Let us know what you're interested in. There are so many different opportunities. So, we like to cater to the interest that a volunteer is looking, to be a part of. It can be anything from button making to coming to events, to web design, to social media.
We're old. We need social media help.
Yeah, we do.
That's a key thing.
So I would say, literally send us a message. It can be via our website or our email, and inquire. Like, we're super nice.
Yeah, I guess. And don't be scared or afraid to take that step to reach out, whether it's our organization or another. I think you all can speak to the benefit of sort of getting involved in community organizations and really the transformational and empowering sort of aspects and rewards that come from it. So if you have free time, if you have that ability to get involved, do so, because, oh my goodness, can it really, not only does it benefit others, but there's so much that you get from it as well. Just the value add that you're creating for others, but also there's so many skills that you learn, right? Like, I think about myself when I was a young person, I did a lot of volunteering and I was involved in community organizations, and it really set me up for success later in life. But I also made really cool friends and built relationships and built a network of community. And I think more and more in our society, it's important to find your people, find your communities, find those people that you can work alongside and have those special moments of joy and love alongside. And that's sort of, I think, what community engagement means for us as an organization, is building something together. And so, advice to young people is like, take that plunge, get involved, send the email, whether it's us or to another organization, DM us on Instagram, right? Look at me sounding youthful. We have Instagram. Like, do the things. Don't be afraid to get involved, because like, it hardly ends badly. Like, you will get something out of it. And oftentimes you're building lifelong, meaningful relationships or making change in your community. And it's pretty awesome. Right.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. What I wanted to comment, oh my God, I completely blanked. Um, oh yeah, I just want to say I can even like attest to that, how rewarding it is myself, I said before, to be a part of something bigger than myself and knowing that just taking that leadership, or yeah, being a leader in my community, and being a part of building something, it feels really transformational. I know it has a big impact on my own personal growth, confidence. So this is definitely something I would encourage for all youth to get involved in organizations like these. And like you said, that fear, like I feel even myself, that it can be kind of my God, it can be kind of intimidating to learn about communities or get involved with communities that we don't know much about, because there's that fear of, oh my God, I can offend them, or I can I'm ignorant and I can hurt them instead of helping. But that's the importance, where you bring up the importance of that really accepting, understanding, and kind individuals within your organization, and creating that environment that it's okay that you don't know, you will learn as long as you do it in a respectful manner. So that definitely encourages even me myself to learn more about what I don't know. So amazing.
Mm-hmm. No, and it's so great to know that your program provides that safe space for youth. And it's important, that individuality aspect should assert itself, right? So we should be inclusive and always providing that safe space for everybody to grow and learn, like you said. But thank you so much, Taylor and Whit, for joining us today. I know I could speak on behalf of Martina, but also the Dare to Be You community, that we're so lucky to have you on our podcast, our very first episode.
Woo!
I had so much fun talking with you today. It was a great meeting you. But we're so thankful for your work.
Oh,
Thank you. It was an honor to be here.
Thank you for having us, and likewise, we are, we're very grateful and appreciative of the work that you're doing within our community, because we can't do this alone. So partnerships and collaboration are so key. So thank you.
Community.